And today we've got a wonderful day of tennis as we finish up our round-robin portion of the competition, where there's much at stake for the positions into the semifinals tomorrow and ultimately the finals on Sunday. We're looking at the live feed here of center court, and behind me, the broadcast booth is court number 2, where our first action will take place today. We'll be going to the coin toss on court 2 as we have Heath Davidson of Australia versus Koji Cedeno of Japan in the quad completion of the round-robin format here.
The rest from the chair. If you have any questions as we move along, feel free to ask. Any questions? Heads, tails, tall. It is tails, you have a choice. Side. Good luck, gents.
Thanks, man.
Whatever.
Taking a look at Heath Davidson right there from Australia. He is in his second ever NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters event, and across from him on the other side of the court, Koji Cedeno from Japan, who is making his NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters debut. These two great players in the quad division have a limited but decent head-to-head record against each other, with Koji having a slight edge at 3 wins to 2. All of those meetings having come in this year in 2018, with the most recent meeting going to Heath Davidson. But as I mentioned, it's been a back and forth head-to-head battle between these two. It was Cedeno who pushed world number 2 Dylan Alcott hard yesterday in a very competitive 2-set match, and it's Heath Davidson looking for his first win here at this year's NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters. I expected an incredibly competitive match today, as these two in their recent head-to-heads have split sets 2 times, with Heath having won one of those 3-setters and Koji having won the other. So I expect a really great and competitive battle. As always, we've got an incredibly busy day here at the National Campus as we complete this round-robin format in the quad division, the men's division, and the women's division. As I mentioned earlier, there is much at stake. The winners today will likely move on into the semifinals, and those that don't, well, their NEC Masters hopes are probably dashed. Today is a day that is completely what we offered the players when we talked to them about coming to sunny Central Florida to participate in this prestigious event. It is sunny, it is warm, and there you're taking a quick look at today's center court schedule. Beginning at 11 o'clock this morning, we'll have Andy Lapthorne versus Lucas Satoli, followed by Julia Capocci, Lucy Schuker, and then on to the men between Gustavo Fernandez, Stefan Houdet, Shingo Kunita, world number 1, versus Gordon Reed, followed up by Yui Kamiji and Kotso Montjane from South Africa to finish our coverage on center court today. I would also like to invite you to participate with us as you're watching at 10:30. There will be a very prestigious presentation on center court of the ITF Brad Parks Award, and I won't give too much away on that, but just know that that is one of the more remarkable awards that the ITF presents in the world of wheelchair tennis, and it is going to a very honorable man and very deserving recipient this year. So we'll look forward to that presentation at 10:30 on center court. But our focus is going to continue to be on court number 2 right now, as Koji Cedeno and Heath Davidson complete their warm-up portion of their match, and will soon be competing in that head-to-head quad singles match. If you were with us a little bit yesterday, you saw some of the best tennis that there is to see. In particular, I would talk a little bit about the Stefan Olsen victory over Shingo Kunita, by what most standards would be considered an upset. Shingo having come in with a 28-1 head-to-head match over Stefan Olsen, but that meant nothing to Olsen yesterday, as he played some of the best tennis of his career to get that win over the world number 1, and put Shingo into a spot today where he probably has a must-win match against Gordon Reed in order to advance into the semifinal round. Gordon being a former world #1 and defending Paralympic gold medalist. That is sure to be an incredibly competitive match today, and one of those guys will be going forward, and one of them will be done. On the women's side, Dita de Groot has continued to be the class of the field, as she is currently sitting in 2-0 in her pool play, and has pretty much dominated both opponents that she's played so far, with straight set victories over both. But likewise, it's world #2 Yui Kamiji from Japan, who has had a little bit tougher schedule with a tough 3-set win over Anik van Koot yesterday. And so it's Yui coming out with a 2-0 record so far in round robin play. And it looks like those two are probably on a collision course. But there's a few other players in the women's draw that would like to derail their hopes and get in the mix as well. We're going to have some continued activity here on the National Campus as we've got another Kids Day. Day #1, we saw a Military Appreciation Day here on the campus, giving some lessons and some court time to some of our military veterans that are in the area. And yesterday we had 200 plus kids on the campus from one of the local elementary schools, and we'll kind of repeat that again today to give them some exposure to this phenomenal sport. And so it's going to be a great day for the kids, it's going to be a great day for the athletes, and hopefully you're going to be able to spend some time with us as you make your way into your weekend wherever you are around the world, listening and watching at home. We'll be joined at various times throughout the day by some additional voices on the broadcast. Much like we have over the past several days, we're attempting to get some different voices on the broadcast just to give you some different perspective about the world of tennis and how it relates to wheelchair tennis. We'll have some players, past and present. We'll have some coaches. We'll have some tennis administrators. You know, all the people that just make the great sport of tennis move forward in the world here. Most of them are revolved around the national campus here at the United States Tennis Association, but we'll get some flavor from some people from all around the world as we continue to give you live coverage here at the national campus. You're continuing to get a nice look, and we'll get repeated looks throughout the day at the entirety of the campus. It is a phenomenal 100-court facility here in Central Florida, with our focus now shifting to court #2. And I think we're just moments away from our opening match. So I'll be quiet for just a second as we get the players ready to go, and I'll pick up coverage as they throw the first ball into play.
What's that? Wait for the serve. Right.
Looks like Heath Davidson's prepared to serve. Koji Sugino on the receiving end, point #1.
Serve.
First point of the day goes to Koji Sugina, and I'm proud to announce that I'm joined here in the broadcast with Mark Gelina from the University of Central Florida, and where he heads up and is instrumental in the professional tennis management program over there. Welcome back to the broadcast, Mark. You were with us on day 1, and so I'm excited to say that we didn't scare you away, and you decided to come back for a little bit more, huh?
Good morning, Paul. Great to be back. You need all the praise. You've certainly had your nose to the grindstone. You're a real workhorse, and it's really you put in some hours here the last couple of days, haven't you?
We've had a couple of full days, but it's been a labor of love. I'm not going to lie. I love the sport. I love the players that are competing here. I love the environment. It's one of the most prestigious events in the world, so it's well worth the time putting it in here on the broadcast for those that are able to watch and listen from places all around the world.
And we're finally getting some Florida weather.
This is what we promised the players and everybody when we said, hey, come to sunny Florida. And it's 30-love to Koji Sugino as he looks to get this first game here in this quad round-robin match. So just to get you familiar, Mark, with the players, you got Heath Davidson from Australia, the right-hander, and Koji Sugino, the left-hander from Japan. So you know who you're looking at there, and we'll be able to bring some continued insight into the sport, and how much as you get exposed to it, you see some interesting things. Getting a good look at Heath Davidson there from Australia. He is a Paralympic gold medalist in doubles, along with his partner Dylan Alcott, who's the number 2 seed here, and off to a really good start in his quad round-robin competition. But it's Koji Sugino right now who's in control of this first game and looking for a break to kick this first match of the day off.
I have a feeling today we're going to have a lot of spectators.
Yeah, I hope the crowd size blossoms a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, a little bit on the broadcast, we've got another Kids Day, and so I'm sure at some point we'll get a great shot of all the activities that's going on in the Nemours Family Center off to our left. And so it's a vibrant campus day, isn't it, Mark?
It's a beautiful day. One of my favorite things is looking at these beautiful Mexican fan palms we have here.
Yeah, the players are getting warmed up on court as they just complete their first match, or first game of the match today. And over there at the Nemours Family Center, as I mentioned, it's Kid Day. And so we have 200 plus kids from one of the local elementary schools, Moss Park. And so they're going through a series of stations where they're introduced to service animals. As we can see there, the shot that they're getting briefed on what service animals provide to folks with disabilities. And behind them, you saw a lot of activity on the court, and that's them going through some tennis stations and athletic agility drills and everything like that. And then ultimately, they're all going to make their way over to the stadium and over to Court 2 to view some of today's great action between our world-class athletes. Great to have the kids here on the campus, and you can see some kids participating in some of the drills today. It's our intention to get these kids hooked on something in life, and as great a sport as tennis it is, why not get them hooked on that?
Beautiful dynamic stretching and having fun down there, and the teachers are right in the middle of it all.
And so now we're back to our live coverage on Court 2 with Koji Sugino serving for the first time in this match. The left-hander from Japan has got a lot of action on his serve. It's certainly one of his weapons, along with his big forehand. You can see him pump in a big first serve there. And on cue, he drives a forehand down the line for the forced error and continues to kind of have the initial edge here in the opening going.
He spreads out a little wider on that ad side to try and swing him out wide on his slice serve, I see.
Yeah, really trying to maximize that left-handed magic that those guys have on the ad side, Mark. And so Koji almost sets up as if he's playing doubles over there. He's willing to give up all that space and say, if you can take that backhand down the line, I'll give it to you. But I think it's going to be a problem for you. So, yeah, he really does try to maximize it. What a difference 2 days makes. As we sat here on day number 1 in some of the opening matches, I think we were bundled up, we were layered, and now it's all about you're in shorts and just got the light top on, and it really feels good. And I think the players are really going to enjoy going into the weekend, getting a little bit more Florida sun and Florida heat, as Heath Davidson continues to kind of give Koji an early fight on his service game. Koji having gotten the break of Davidson in the first game to go up 1-love. But right now it's Davidson 30-15. Koji with the easy forehand winner to the open court there, Mark. Looked pretty comfortable with that shot, didn't he?
Yes. that left serve, if you don't take them out wide, you aim at their hips and you try and jam them up, that's just as good a serve as taking them wide a lot of times.
Yeah, I think everybody pretty much anticipates the wide one, and then with his skill, ability to control the ball with his mostly side spin on the serve, he's able to kind of spin that ball into the body just when you're looking for it out wide. Here it comes in on you, and so very effective. He gave world number 2 Dylan Alcott all he could handle yesterday in a 7-5, 6-4 loss, but really pushed the Paralympic gold medalist around quite a bit, and I think Dylan was happy to get out of that match with a straight set victory, as competitive as it was.
I always try to get a lefty in my regular games at least once a week, just to stay used to that spin coming at you.
It is, you know, as I coach around the country and around the world, I always have a phrase whenever I come across, particularly lefties in camps that we're working on, and I tell them straight up, nobody likes you, you know. Nobody likes lefties, and it's nothing personal. It's just that they just give us such a problem, and we're 90, you know, probably 90 to 95% of the time we're used to seeing right-handers, and that's our norm. And then when they get in the mix, it just is very disruptive. Heath takes that half volley and just kind of pushes a little bit wide. So,
you know, Paul, my middle son Mitchell's a lefty, and he hits a lot with Martina Navratilova. And we were down in Miami, and I said to Martina, he wanted me to ask her a couple of questions. So I said, Martina, have you ever seen 4 lefties on the court all together in a doubles match in your time in the game? She thought for a minute. She said, no, I don't think I ever had. And I said, well, when I played a national 40s, I witnessed that. We all came and watched, because just the way they spin it, the way they cut it, is just a different animal. And
for those of you who are looking and watching at home, there's our Court 2 schedule for the day. We're currently on pace with Koji Sugino and Heath Davidson, our first match, followed by Dita DeGroot, women's number 1 versus Sabine Ellerbrock, followed by Joe Girard and Takashi Sanada in a critical third round-robin match, and Stefan Olsen, currently undefeated, against Nicolas Pfeiffer of France, and then followed on by 2 Dutch women, Aniek van Koot and Marjolein Baus. Again, that match having great implications as to who's going to advance out of pool play in the women's division.
We've got some good matchups today.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Again, in a tournament like this, NEC Singles Masters, where you bring in the best 8 men, best 8 women, and the top 6 quads, really from the get-go you have nothing but great matches, and that's what makes this event so spectacular for our viewers, for the players. I think they know they need to hit the ground running, and there's no tuning up, there's no warming up. It's like, all right, at any given match I might be up against a world number 1. Pretty much everybody's top 5 here, or has spent time probably in the top 5 in their career, with a few just having made it into the top 8. But the majority have been around for a while and have really established themselves as the great players in the game. Koji taking a big cut at that forehand, but really missing that one pretty big, but you're not going to see him stop swinging. He's up 2-0 in this early going of our opening match here on court number 2, and it's going to be him looking to dictate play most of the day, and Heath, who's got some great chair skills, looking to defend and force Koji into hitting one more ball.
Nice angle, beautiful angle.
Yep, look at where he was on the court. That's what kind of offers and affords him the ability to hit that angle, kind of deep inside the baseline, well into the blue, and no answer from Davidson with that shot. Great depth right on the baseline there with that backhand shot by Davidson. And he's going to continue to have to hit shots like that. But that's put him up 40-15 to get his first look at some game points. the early going of this match. Quad Division, final day of round robin competition, day 3 of the NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters. Oh, another great shot by Heath. He really working Koji around the court and kind of dictating from kind of well behind the baseline, stroking out, but able to string together a number of really great shots there and finish that point with the forehand.
He tried the delayed approach shot. It just didn't quite work that time, but that's a good maneuver. Loop it up high and then look for a short ball, or maybe you can even go in and take it in midair.
So on the first changeover of the day, it's Koji Cedeno up 2-1 over Heath Davidson, but I think both players are probably just kind of settling in a little bit, getting comfortable with the conditions here today. There's a little bit of smoke in the air as there was some, I think, a burn project going on in some of the development that's going on around the campus. I think as they're preparing to get that resort that's going to be really one of the great marquee pieces of the puzzle that's part of the development plan for Lake Nona in its entirety.
There's going to be nice trails coming right over the national campus. They've cleared out that woods in a 2-week time period. They've got it to where it's at right now. That's going to be special.
It is. It's going to be, I don't know, I think what the timeline is, it's probably got to be at least a 2-year project before that resort is up and running. It's going to be a world-class elite resort with lagoons and 5-star accommodations, and so put it on your calendar probably for about 2020 that piece of this puzzle will be put together, as it's going to be sitting right on the outskirts of this national campus, and will make for some really great events that we'll be able to host here in the future. Great point. Koji tried to drop something short to bring Heath in, thinking he might not be able to handle that, but he looked pretty comfortable with that shot as he goes backhand cross court off the sideline for a clean winner. Really well executed by Heath. Looked very comfortable with that shot.
Just like able-bodied tennis, you have to get off to a quick start. Those first couple of bumps will get you up to that short ball. And he got up there and angled it off nicely.
Yeah, he's got some great mobility. Really moves the chair well. One of his great strengths. And so Koji's going to have to continue to hit some really great shots to get Heath out of position throughout the day.
I always like that saying by Rick Macy, if you're out of position, you better be a good magician.
It's got a nice flow. I'm going to, I had somebody say they were going to steal something from me yesterday, and I think I might just have to steal that one. That's a good one. Out of position, you better be a magician. Speaking of evil magic, that left-handed overhead right there from Koji looked like it had some magic on it, didn't it? Really utilized the slice. That just
when a lefty's going to slice it on an overhead, you want to watch your left side. When a righty is going to slice it, you want to watch your right side. And he really carved that ball, didn't he?
Sure did. Looked like me carving up the turkey last week. Thanksgiving.
30-15.
Game number 4 of this opening match, as we're only minutes away from our presentation on center court, which we'll be happy to bring to you live. And ultimately we'll have our ITF Brad Parks recipient up here with us to have a little interview, talk to him a little bit later in our broadcast. It'll be a special time to share some thoughts and listen to him talk about all the things he's done in the sport of wheelchair tennis in his lifetime.
You promised me I could meet Brad, the legend.
Brad's not going to be here. This is the Brad Parks Award,
Oh.
okay, in honor of Brad, the legend.
Oh, I want to meet him.
But the man who's receiving the award is a legend in his own right. So one day you'll meet Brad Parks, and when you do, you'll be as honored as everybody else is to meet him, because he's just always been a special guy, very humble for all that he's contributed to this sport. I mean, there's few people that can say that they've been the founder or the originator or the foundation of a sport. It's just really unique.
Well, when you can win an award that's named after him, that's special. One of the highlights of my career is I met Arthur Ashe on about 4 occasions.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you're talking legends, he's really on the top of the precipice as one of them in the great sport of tennis. All that he's meant to certainly American tennis, but I think Arthur Ashe is one of those people that kind of transcends nationality, and so he really is bigger than just an American tennis icon. He is a tennis icon and a humanitarian, and somebody that is universally just respected and thought of as really one of the great humans that we've ever had the experience of spending time with on this earth.
Now, the NCAAs will be coming here in May of 2019. Well, when I was a young guy in 1966.
Great shot by Cody there as he pumps his fist and takes game to lead 3-1 in this opening set. And now back to 1966.
Excuse me, Paul, but
good.
Arthur Ashe came into Michigan State University and played the NCAAs there, and I ball boyed for him. And he had his rackets down, and I reached down and grabbed one of his sweatbands and started putting it in my pocket. And he said, "Son, may I have that sweatband back?" I was embarrassed. I had to pull that out of my pocket and give it back to him. But I wanted that for a souvenir.
No doubt, no doubt. Little piece Arthur.
I reminded him of that story years later when I was traveling with Aaron Krickstein and came in touch with him, and he laughed. He said, "Oh, I'll get you another one."
Yeah, nowadays that's pretty commonplace for the athletes to finish in the Grand Slams courtside, to rip off those soaking wet sweatbands and everything and toss them to the crowd. But they're a souvenir for if you can get one from a Federer, or Djokovic, or Nadal, or Serena, some of the big names in the game. And it's Heath Davidson who's now got a 2-point advantage in this service game against Koji Sugino. But Sugino with the 3-1 lead in the opening parts of this first set on court number 2, our opening match of today. But we are probably getting closer and closer to our presentation on center court.
Have you been commuting to Lakeland, or have you been staying here in Lake Nona?
No, the days have been long, and so even though it's just a little bit over an hour to get back home to Lakeland, that's 2 hours a day that I'd rather have in the hotel room in bed. And so typically our days have finished here over the course of the first couple at about 9 o'clock. Our coverage has ended, so by the time we get back and get cleaned up and everything, it's about 10 or 10:30. And so at that point, I wasn't looking forward to an hour drive, and so I've been staying here in lovely Lake Nona.
You know, Oprah Winfrey, she said that if you ever want to move to a community that's really growing, she said, go to Lake Nona.
Oprah said that.
Oh, yeah. This is one of the 10 fastest growing communities in the country.
That's phenomenal. I mean, I didn't know that. I know Orlando is always put on the map as a place that's growing, but specific to Orlando, Lake Nona just kind of being, I guess, what we would call almost like a suburb of Orlando. But certainly I know the developmental plan for this community is phenomenal. And so it is, we're literally watching it being built before our eyes, aren't we?
We sure are.
With this national campus being one of the centerpieces of that development plan.
I think they thought Medical City was going to be the centerpiece, but I think they're realizing the national campus is what's doing it all.
.40-30 here for Koji Sugino. Up 3-1 over Heath Davidson currently on court number 2, our opening match today of coverage of the NEC Singles Masters. Great look of Koji going from deep in the baseline all the way up into net and then back out again, and it's the unforced error by Davidson that gives Sugino the 4-1 early lead here in this opening set.
Nice all-court game. You can beat them in different areas. That's a valuable game to have.
Yeah, I was able to I was really impressed with Koji yesterday as I watched him play Dylan Alcott, who I certainly thought had the advantage going into that match. Ultimately was the victor, but I was impressed with Cedeno's ability to cover the court as I've watched him kind of progress as a little bit of a newer player on the scene. His mobility skills have continued to improve. His kind of understanding of the court has continued to improve. I know that they're putting a lot of time and effort into training him. He's probably played as much tournament play as any other quad in the world. As I think I looked online yesterday, he's participated in 22 tournaments on the UNIQLO Tour this year. So that's about half the year. I mean, 26 weeks in a year is half, and he's been on the road for 22. This would make 23 right here. So that is a full plate. And I know that he's got Tokyo 2020 on his radar, and he wants to be ready to compete for gold there on his home soil.
I think that's more tournaments than Federer played this year.
No doubt. Well, without question. Yeah, the Fed just kind of eases his way into the ones that he needs to, gets himself warmed up for the majors and some of the more significant ones. But yeah, that is a heavy load there. There's not many people on the UNIQLO Tour that are playing as many as Koji. But that's the commitment. That's what it takes to get yourself into the top 10. It's the match play. It's the match toughness that you're developing. So it's Koji serving at 4-1. But as I mentioned earlier, we'll leave the coverage on court 2 in a moment after this point, just to get over to center court and see the presentation of the ITF Brad Parks Award. And it's Koji Sugino with a 15-love lead as we now go to center court.
Welcome, everyone, to the NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters event here in Orlando, Florida. We have a special presentation today, and we'd like to welcome a few of our special guests. First of all, Chris Dent, the ITF Senior Executive Director of Professional Tennis to my left. Kurt Bender, the ITF Wheelchair Tennis Committee member. And our honoree today, Rick Draney, who is the recipient of the ITF's highest wheelchair honor.
Thank you, Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to present a very special award to a very special gentleman in the history of wheelchair tennis. The ITF Brad Parks Award is named after California's Brad Parks, who was a founder who founded the sport of wheelchair tennis in 1976. The award is presented annually to an individual or organization that has made a significant contribution to wheelchair tennis on an international basis. Rick Draney was instrumental in the development and promotion of wheelchair tennis quad division in the 80s and 90s. His contribution to the sport, both in the U.S. and internationally, is immeasurable. Rick began his own wheelchair tennis career in 1984. Then the quad division became an officially recognized classification in the USA in the late 1980s. Among the many clinics and demonstrations Rick was involved in leading were clinics at the Stoke Mandeville Games in the UK in the early 1990s, which were the catalyst for the international growth of the quad division. As an administrator and influencer, along with the likes of Brad Parks, Rick worked with the USTA and the ITF to recognize the quad division, and its development led to the introduction of the official Quad World Rankings in 1998. Also in 1998, a quad event was included in the World Team Cup for the first time. As a player, Rick won 2 World Team Cups while representing the USA, as well as major titles including multiple US Open and British Open Super Series crowns. While still playing, Rick also took on the role of the US Open Super Series tournament director for the best part of a decade. From the advent of the computerized quad division rankings, Rick spent more than 120 weeks, probably more than 120 hours, as a quad singles number 1 between 1997 and February of 2002. Rick's influence and pioneering work has a significant bearing on the quad division's singles and doubles medal events that he attained in the Paralympic Games in Athens in 2004 for the first time. Although he never got to play wheelchair tennis in the Paralympics himself, Rick's influence burned bright in Athens, where fellow American David Wagner won the quad singles silver and quad doubles gold medals. David's own introduction to wheelchair tennis had come just 5 years earlier at a clinic organized by Rick Draney. On behalf of the ITF, Rick, and the wheelchair tennis family, I am delighted to present the ITF's Brad Parks Award to you.
Thank you, Kurt, and thank you, Chris, very much for this award. I am humbled and honored and flattered and appreciative to be recognized by the ITF. I recognize that it's my name receiving the award this year, but I know over the years there have been many, many people that were involved with me and everything I tried to do to give back to a sport that gave so much to me. I truly appreciated all I was able to accomplish as a player, but found even greater reward in trying to do something positive to help influence the direction of the sport going forward. And my thanks to the USTA, my home country, for all that they have done and all that they are doing, and to the ITF as well over the years for all that they have done and are doing now, and I see great things going forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you. Easy enough? Yeah.
All right, well, we're back to our live coverage here and broadcast at Lake Nona, the USTA National Campus. It was a great time spent there on center court, honoring a really, truly great man, Rick Draney, as he receives this year's ITF Brad Parks Award for his contributions on a global scale to the sport of wheelchair tennis. And so it's with guys like Rick having put in the work and countless hours that has made it possible for events like this to be taking place here at Lake Nona. And I so hope that the players that are participating in this event maybe get a chance to thank an iconic figure like Rick, who is really one of the godfathers of this sport, really beloved among all the people that he's ever had an impact on over the course of his years involved in the sport. Truly just a genuine individual, and we're going to hopefully get a chance to speak with Rick a little bit later as he'll get up maybe and join me in the booth and share some thoughts about some of the early days and the foundational days of wheelchair tennis and how different it is today, and what it means to be on the NEC Tour for these players now compared to what it was like back in the day when he was a player and someone who was kind of pushing the sport forward for years and years. Laying the foundation for these guys like Cody and Heath Davidson, who are participating in their round-robin match on court number 2. It is really something spectacular to have had Rick with us here today. And we resume coverage on court 2 as Heath Davidson throws a serve into the backhand of Koji Cedeno, and then gets on with the court. Koji coming forward, pressing the action, taking the volley with a nice point at the net there.
Well, when you move in, you can weaken yourself a little bit defensively, but you sure have the offense when you're up there if you can put a little angle on your volley.
Which Koji was able to do, and in that one he goes behind Heath, who's not able to get the chair around. So a good job of mixing things up by Koji at the net there, once going into the open court and the next time going behind Heath, which is a great tactical play in wheelchair tennis.
It's always good to use the scrambled egg technique. Mix it up a little.
Mix it up a little bit, exactly right. Yeah, variety, spice of life. How many other cliches can we come up with? Right? So it's Koji Cedeno with a commanding 1-set-to-love lead. There it is, first set in the books for Cedeno. 6-1 over Heath Davidson as they go to the set changeover. They're continuing to take pictures and honor Rick on center court, but we'll stay right now with court number 2 in this opening round match. But just to give you a little heads up, in about 15 minutes they'll have cleared the ceremonial podium on center court, and we'll be getting on with action there with an additional quad division round robin matches. They finish up their round robin today. That matchup will be between Andy Lapthorne of Great Britain, who had a great win yesterday against world number 1 David Wagner, as he competes against Lucas Satoli, who's going to be fighting to possibly have a chance to move forward into the semifinals, as he's already down love 1. But with a win against Andy, that would put that pool into an interesting situation, as all the players would be 1-1, and it would come down to some tiebreakers that I'm not aware of what the format is for breaking that tie to determine who's going to be going on to the semifinals. But that would really make for an interesting situation.
That's the beauty of this event. You don't get knocked out. You just keep playing. You'll seek your own level, but if you have one loss, you're not out.
Yep, it is. So, you know, there's a lot to be said to those that can kind of take that early loss and then kind of regroup and then come back and fight it out in their remainder of their round robin play, and possibly put themselves into a position to advance into the semis on Saturday and possibly ultimately into the finals on Sunday. So a lot at stake there between Andy Lapthorne and Lucas Satoli, the match that will be coming up on center court at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
You know, sometimes a setback is a step back for a comeback. So these players can come back in these situations, take the second set after losing the first set, and they're still in good shape. But you got to regroup. You can't get all discouraged and toss in the towel. The match is a long match. This is about the midway point in this match right here. He jammed him with that lefty serve. The slice is a tough ball to read, especially coming off a left-hander's racket. Many times it's going to come in and jam you, which it did on that one. There he got the wide serve in, and the return was hit back, but then that opened up the other corner. That's the typical X pattern. You go wide, and then you go to the opposite corner, see if you can get the player out of position.
So, Mark, I know you haven't seen a ton of wheelchair tennis. You've had enough to know and get familiar with it, but from day 1 to day 3, what are some of the observations that you've kind of come away from? What are some kind of the similarities or differences that you're seeing as you've spent the majority of your life in the tennis industry, but this is something that's it's not someplace in the tennis world that you've spent a lot of time at?
Well, the thing I've noticed is just the different styles. Mm-hmm. Like able-bodied tennis, you play all different styles. Some players hit with more topspin, some players slice it more, some players are a little more aggressive, and there's no difference. These players got to figure it out. It's a game of chess. One player might get a move, and you get the next move. So you got to figure it out.
And that move right there, the slice backhand by Cody Cedeno, it was a nice move on the chessboard. Yeah, I like to use the analogy of tennis being a boxing match and a chess match all combined, because there is a physicality to it. Not that they're literally changing blows like it would be in a boxing match, but it is that physicality that happens. And then, of course, the mind of the chessboard and the move that is just not one move, but it's possibly one move to set up 2 or 3 down the line, right? And that's kind of classic tennis. Is one shot is designed to set up the next 2 or 3.
And the thing that really impresses me is how they have to recover after every single shot. If you stand and you're an observer for just a little bit of time, you're not going to get back. Stand or in a chair, you're not going to get back in position. So you've got to recover quickly.
There's Heath recovering right now, as you mentioned it, getting as much court coverage as he can. Koji waiting to see where Heath is leaning a little bit, and again going behind him, which is really one of the great plays. And off to a good start here in the second set, having already captured the first set convincingly, 6-1. But I think you're right, and I think as people that I've experienced who are tennis people get a look at the sport maybe for the first time or the first couple times, especially at this level, they really start to see that how much the games are similar. I mean, despite the fact that it's taking place in a wheelchair, the movement is different, of course, but you're right, playing styles, the shots and the strokes, all the components of the game of tennis are really very much the same. The grips and all the things that are technical related to the game, very much the same. The same principles apply whether you're in the wheelchair or standing, and so it's just who creates the tactical advantages and is able to kind of finish off points.
You got to figure it out. You've got to be a detective. You got to find out what's my opponent doing to me, what can I do to them to counter the game plan, and it's no different than able-bodied players.
Yeah, I think with a lot of young players that I work with, they get so focused on their side of the court, right? That's just typical in the development of a young player, where they're like, okay, what am I doing? What do I need to do? What am I doing, right? And so at some point there needs to be that transition of, well, what is my opponent doing? And having awareness of what's going on the other side of the net to say, all right, it's not just me, it's what they're doing that's kind of forcing me to do something, or I'm forcing them to do something. And so it's when they become, that light bulb goes on and they have that awareness of what's going on the other side of the court, that's when you see some real development in young players.
The old-time player Bill Tilden, he had a good story. He said, every time I get done playing, people would come up to me and say, Bill, I never play good against you. I never play good. And Bill would look at him, he'd say, you know what, I make you play bad. I do the strategy on you to break down your game. So it's not what you might think. I'm making you play the way you are playing.
Yeah, it's not by chance. It is by design that I'm able to access certain areas of your game that you don't like. And the best players pick up on that stuff quickly and really get on that attack. Strength to weakness. It's all about strength to weakness matchups. And so far in this opening match today, it's been the strength of Koji Cedeno and a few of the weaknesses of Heath Davidson, and certainly it's Koji who's had the edge on exploiting some of those. I'm not going to say that Heath's got weaknesses, but it's the matchups that Koji's been able to implement upon Heath that's given him the early advantage here in this opening match.
No, that was definitely an unforced error, that last shot. Well, not that one.
No, nothing unforced about that.
No.
That was that's the big Koji forehand that we saw a lot of yesterday. That one was the flat-driven one that he hits with a ton of pace. And we did see some examples yesterday of him able to spin it in as well and create angle with it. So it is really one of his significant weapons without question.
Out. Game's good up.
Heath just missing the mark there a little bit, kind of like disappointed in himself, looking a little frustrated as he goes down 2-love in this second set, having already lost the first set 6-1. So we'll see if he can get something going here. He desperately needs to change the momentum here, or else he's going to be out quickly.
Well, back in about 1988 is when they started charting unforced errors. And for the listeners, an unforced error is simply when your opponent does nothing to make you miss, you just miss the shot. And he's had a few unforced errors, but if he can regroup, he can still get back into this.
Yeah, we've seen some moments of brilliance from him. I mean, he is obviously a great player in his own right, but it's been all Koji today. It just seems like the matchup is something that's giving Heath, as we've talked a lot about it today, matchups, it's something that's given Heath a lot of problems, as you see him there just shaking his head and frustrated, and just he's not getting any type of read on Koji, and really doesn't seem to know where any of his shots are going.
I think he's guessing a lot of the balls are going to an area, but Koji's hitting to the same spot twice and hitting behind him a little bit today.
Yeah, that seems to be the predominant tactical strategy that I'm seeing Koji is I'm going to make Heath reverse out and go behind him pretty much all opportunities. And then about the time that Heath looks like he's sitting on that one, it's Koji that goes into the open court. And so when you got a player guessing, you are at a significant advantage, and that's what's produced the big gap so far today. Heath takes a swipe at that missed first serve. A little bit of frustration there, and sometimes you just got to get it out. There's a great shot by Heath Davidson. Forehand up the line. Cody can't track it down, so that's the kind of shots that Heath's going to have to repeat here. It can't just be a one and done. He's going to need to string a few of those together.
Cody will come in if he gets a chance. He'll use that sneak attack.
Yeah, he's not afraid. We've seen that, and in both his match yesterday and in the early going today, certainly not shy about getting into the net. I think that comes from having been a former player outside of the chair.
Got him twisted around on that one.
That's how you do it. It's a little bit breezy here today as I'm looking at the flags and the banners of all the players that are here for this competition. The USTA and the event staff did a phenomenal job of creating an individual banner for each of the players that's here, representing themselves, their national governing bodies, their countries. And so it really does set the tone for a great environment to understand who these athletes are. And so as spectators come in to participate in the event, they'll get a look-see on the banners first. Then they get to see the live action on court.
When they saw those banners when they came in, I bet they had a gleaming grin on their face when they saw those, huh?
Yeah, I think, and you can see some of them waving in the side of the court there as we're looking at action here on court number 2 as Cody Cedeno on the changeover second set is up 2-1, but that's a critical game for Heath Davidson right there. Possibly get himself in the mix in this second set and look to extend and get into a third set if possible. And so as a reminder, here's our center court schedule for today with some of the great action we have. You see a quad match coming up at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. That's 4 p.m. GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. There's a quick look at Lucas Satoli, who's preparing for his match on center court. He'll be joined shortly by Andy Lapthorne of Great Britain as those two guys battle it out, having had a great career head-to-head matchup, many great matches between the two of them. And so we'll be joining that coverage on center court shortly. We anticipate those two lefties to have an outstanding match on center court as you see Andy Lapthorne of Great Britain joining his opponent Lucas Satoli over at their respective benches, getting prepared to go out in the center and receive their coin toss and begin that match. We'll be joining that coverage with the coin toss and live action there on center court. But right now it's back to court number 2 and our ongoing match that started this morning at 10. Our opening match of the day, day 3 of the NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters. It's Heath Davidson throwing a first serve into Koji Sugino of Japan.
Paul, every time I see that big shot of the campus, I start thinking, heaven on earth. Tennis, heaven on earth.
If you are into tennis, if you like anything or all things tennis, that's you're right, Mark. That is a great view. And once people tend to be kind of they get the tennis bug, right? At some point in their life, all those that play tennis, it's like I got the bug. And for many people I know who have visited the campus for the first time, they're just like in awe and just are amazed at the magnitude of this facility. There really aren't very many like it in the world that have a facility as big with as many courts, the variety, and certainly the atmosphere. So really, really great that we could have this event here for these tremendous athletes that have come from all over the world. Asia and Europe, South America, North America, Australia. So there's 7 continents by my count, and I think we have 6 of them represented here. Maybe we don't have any. Oh, we do. KG Onjane is from Africa, so we do. We have 6 of the 7 continents represented in our players here at this tournament. Pretty remarkable.
No Iceland?
No. No Antarctica. That's the one. That's the only one that's missing.
Antarctica.
That's the only one missing.
Thank you, Ray. Yeah.
Well, for the viewers, we are witnessing a few moonball techniques today too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a great technique, and so that's the first sign of real great positive emotion we've seen out of Heath Davidson right there. As we mentioned, he kind of got himself going a little bit to get this thing now to 2-all in the second set, and so he's got a little fire in him right now, and so we might be in for a little bit more of a match than the first set indicated. We're going to be going to coverage on center court here momentarily as we're on the break. I think we'll be joined in the booth here shortly. As I mentioned before, we're going to be honored to probably be able to spend some time with Rick Draney, the very recent recipient of the ITF Brad Parks Award, presented annually to an individual who has given great love, passion, blood, sweat, and tears to the sport of wheelchair tennis. That award named after the founder, an originator of the sport. And we'll now join center court. We'll go live there for the coin toss to begin the opening match here on center court between Andy Lapthorne of Great Britain and Lucas Satoli of South Africa, two members of the quad division, so that I think that our guest in the broadcast booth, Rick Draney, will be able to speak very eloquently about. And so I will say to the viewers that, Rick, welcome to the broadcast. Congratulations on your much-deserved award. It is an honor to have witnessed that presentation, and so I'm just honored to have you in the booth with us here for a little talk.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's great to be here, and again, I am humbled and flattered and honored to receive the award and appreciate all that's been done alongside me as I've tried to give a little something back to the sport, but the USTA and the ITF both, to see where we've been. You and I are old enough to kind of know what it was like back in the day, and compare that to where we are now and see the good and positive things going forward is wonderful to be a part of that. Thank you.
You know, when you started in the sport so many years ago, did you ever envision that it was going to get to the level that it's at right now?
I don't know that any of us could have realistically thought, maybe always dreamed and wondered.
Well, there you see a live shot of us here in the broadcast booth. It's myself here in the hat and Rick Draney not. So you know who's who in the booth, but it's Rick Draney who is the recipient of the ITF Brad Parks Award, and we're honored to spend a little time with him, Rick. So again, continue on with the dreams that you once had about what wheelchair tennis could be.
Well, and again, it's beyond anything I maybe realistically thought when I was playing, but how awesome is it to see growth, development, professionalism, inclusion, opportunity, everything that takes place these days is incredible. To be here at the USTA National Campus as part of the NEC Wheelchair Masters and to see the level of professionalism, the quality of play, the facility is phenomenal. Everything is just wonderful about this, and how could you not have a great time being here?
And so you joined, you got in late last night from Utah, which for those around the world is out on the western side of the United States. And so how does it feel to be in a little bit of sunshine with Utah having been blasted with its wintry time of year? So is it good to get a little sunshine in your life?
We were in the low 20s when I left, and I'm going to be going home to plenty of snow on the ground based on the weather report. So, yeah, to be here, I don't care what time of night I got in and how I might be feeling this morning. It's just great to be here and at this facility and enjoying this event.
Yeah, maybe you'll have a flight delay or cancellation that just happens to pop up. Oh, looks like I'm going to have to spend a couple extra days in Florida. Sorry, I won't be home.
I suppose I could do that, but I do need to get home. But it
I
will
got
be
your
great
back
to be
if
here
you
through
need
the
to play
weekend.
that card. Yeah, it will be. Yeah, so we're great to have you. So you're getting ready to look at some quad match that's going to take place here on center court. We're looking right now live on court 2, another quad match between Heath Davidson and Koji Sugino of Japan. All knotted at 2-all in the second set, with the first set having gone to Sugino. 40-all there at deuce. What do you think about the quad division as that has evolved? Because certainly you were one of the instrumental people in the development of that division and really making that division an integral part on what is now the UNIQLO Wheelchair Tennis Tour. So what do you think about the quad division and how it's evolved over the years?
It is great to see the international flavor to the event and this division these days. Early on, a lot of wheelchair tennis really was in the United States, and that's where it started, and that's where a lot of the growth began and then spread to the rest of the world. But to see, we have one American competing here in the quad division, the rest are from other countries, and oftentimes when I played back in the day, it might have been one or two from other countries, and most of the quad players were U.S. And so to see that international flavor is amazing, to see that quads have taken up this sport and gone forward with it from those early days.
Right. And, I give, I think I talked about it in one of the earlier broadcasts, all credit to the ITF for their really specific effort to do that. And in other words, to go into areas around the world and say, hey, listen, here's this sport of wheelchair tennis that you can play. And so to really encourage people who might require require playing in the quad division if they didn't qualify for the men's or women's division, and give them that additional opportunity. As you mentioned, we're looking at representation here from on court number 2. You're looking at Asia, you're looking at Australia, you're looking at Europe, and you're looking at Africa. So 4 players here that are getting ready to compete in their matches, all from 4 different continents around the world, and that's remarkable.
Without the ITF's commitment, willingness, dedication to make this happen, it would not have happened. And hopefully none of us ever forget that or take that for granted, to again think about where wheelchair tennis started, its humble beginnings in Southern California with Brad and his wife Wendy and all those involved in the National Foundation of Wheelchair Tennis. But now to look out over the landscape of wheelchair tennis internationally is remarkable.
Yeah, the program for years that the ITF had was called the Silver Fund, and then now it's called the ITF Wheelchair Tennis Development Fund, where they go into areas, support those areas, look to develop and lay down the foundation for grassroots programs, continue to support them in many capacities, and then really just sow the seeds in some of those areas. And now we're looking at, as you mentioned, we're looking at those seeds having come to fruition now in these players that have evolved over the years and come into the top level of this sport. And so it is great to see the fruits of those labors.
It is, again, remarkable is probably the word. It might be overused, amazing, wonderful, anything like that, but it almost defies description from where wheelchair tennis started. I don't know that anyone could have envisioned this, maybe dreams and hopes of it someday, but to actually be around and still be involved in some capacity and see it coming to fruition and where it is really wonderful.
And it's now coverage on center court between Andy Lapthorne of Great Britain and Lucas Satoli of South Africa. It's Andy, the left-hander from Great Britain, throwing the first serve into play in this last round-robin match of the tournament prior to going into the crossover matches and semifinals that'll take place tomorrow here at the National Campus. And it's 2 great left-handers battling it out on center court.
Just about everybody here I've seen very little of, if any, for some of these players. Most of them came along after my days as a player and now as a former player coming back and watching this. I'm personally excited just to get a chance to watch because I've not seen some of these players play and compete, but the fact that it's still tennis and we're still here with everybody else is wonderful.
Yeah, these are the young bucks.
The next generation, maybe 2 generations.
Yeah, they might be, right?
Involved.
Yeah, both phenomenal players in their own right, Lucas and Andy. As I mentioned, both left-handers have a significant head-to-head matchup career, having played 26 matches against each other over the years, dating back to 2012. And this is their first meeting here in 2018. Imagine that throughout the entirety of this year, both playing a full schedule on the UNIQLO Tour, this is their first matchup, and what an important matchup it is, as the winner of this one will certainly punch their ticket into the semifinals, and the loser will probably be on the outs. And so it's a critical match for both of them.
There is a lot riding and on every match, as we know as tennis players. But yeah, when you get right down to it, sometimes it is that win or go home time of competition, and that's where we are here today.
Yeah, on the third day of round robin competition, unlike the first day, the third day is pretty much a knockout situation. You know, if you come away with a loss on the third day at the end of the round robin, it's likely that you're going to be out. The first day, a loss won't kill you, it doesn't knock you out. You stay alive, but you're pretty much up against it from that point going forward.
And it will be interesting to see how much nerves come into play. They both look a little tentative and a little unsettled early on, and the challenge will be which one of them can raise their level of the game to what they want to do and what they're capable of doing, and whether or not that's going to be enough or the other's going to respond and react and into a battle.
That was a great replay and great shot of Lucas Satoli taking the forehand down the line on the return to serve winner, as we go to deuce in this opening game of this round-robin match on center court between Andy Lapthorne of Great Britain and Lucas Satoli of South Africa. As I mentioned, head-to-heads, these guys have competed against each other 26 times in their career, and it's Andy Lapthorne with just a slight advantage, having won 15 of the 26 matchups, but that means that's Lucas having come through with 11 wins, but it's been mostly Andy Lapthorne over the course of the last couple years, dating back to 2017. And their matchups, the most recent matchups they had, it's been all Andy Lapthorne. A couple of close matches in there, one three-setter, and one match that was 7-5, 7-5 last year at the NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters. In the semifinal, it was Lapthorne over Satoli 7-5, 7-5, so highly competitive.
Nice forehand there to finish that point for Andy.
So Rick, who were some of the great players back in the day when you were competing in the quad division? Give us a little history lesson of some of the names that I'm sure many of these players maybe don't even know, but there might be a few listeners out there that we can call some of the greats from the earlier days in this sport.
Greg Thompson was actually the first quad that was competing in wheelchair tennis. I didn't start playing until 1984, and they had a quad division prior to that, but Greg Thompson from Southern California was kind of the man to beat back in the day. And I remember my first U.S. Open wheelchair tennis championships. I lost to him in the final. Okay. And he was the one that deserves some credit for helping get the quad division started. Joel Bernal, Brian Bromley were some others from those very early days. Steve Everett, who uses a power chair, was one of those that started earlier and made a name for himself for many, many years. Rick Amber, Brian Hansen, Robbie Sanders, Chris Studwell, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, but a great Chris individual and a great competitor.
And, great guy. Yeah, he is sadly missed.
Rick Amber as well has passed and no longer with us, but those are some of the names that I can remember. And back in the early days, the competition was intense between that group of individuals, and then it started to blossom and continue. And we started in the early 90s with some of the international flavor and seeing that take place, and now growing to where it is, to where, again, I don't even know most of these players these days. It's a different generation, but it's still great to see them out and the sport continuing to grow.
Well, it's not your job to know them, it's their job to know you, Rick. I mean, you being the ITF Brad Parks Award winner, they should be I don't say this in any tongue-in-cheek, but they should be appreciative of all the efforts that you put forth in those early days that you're talking about and referencing to get them to where they are right now. And I think these guys are living some pretty good lives in regards to their ability to travel around the world and compete in a sport that they love. And it's because of guys like you that have put in the work that has allowed them to be on the tour and kind of living a life of a professional athlete.
And it is great to see, and I'm grateful for the small part that I had in maybe helping move that forward, and hopefully players these days recognize the opportunities they have to contribute and give back to the sport that's given them so much. That was an uncharacteristic double fault by Andy to lose that game on his serve.
Yep, so he is in the littlest of holes that you can be in, as he's just down one game in the opening set of this. And there's Lucas, so kind to give that double fault right back to him, huh?
To give it right back. That's
Yeah.
a little too generous. When you go up a break, you want to try to have a solid service game on your own and not give that break of serve back. But again, I just kind of get a sense that both of them are still a little bit tentative, both still trying to find their game a little bit and get settled into the groove.
You know, both you and I know one of the legends in the sport, and again, talking about somebody who kind of left us way too early, and that's Randy Snow. One of the great lessons that I learned from Randy in my time spending with him as a partner on the court once in a while, and certainly having done some clinics and camps with him over the years, is he had this saying that the first 3 games don't count. And I really have taken that to heart over the years, and I've kind of tried to pass that along to a lot of players. It's the discovery phase, like in a trial. It's like the defense and the prosecution, you know, just discovering what it is that we're dealing with here. Both of the players feeling each other out, and typically about, I don't know, I think the statistics say it's about 85% of the time it's going to be 2-1 somebody, that it's actually fairly rare that it's 3-0 or love 3. And so we'll see how it plays out in this match, but my money says it's going to be 2-1 somebody, and that both of these guys, though having played a lot of tennis against each other, are still feeling each other out today and seeing who's got the goods.
The legend Randy Snow, so many wise sayings and comments, and he really was a student of the game and very cerebral, not just gifted with physical talent and a great heart to compete, but very smart about tennis as well.
Well, there it is. With Lapthorne having gotten the break, that guarantees our 2-1 on the changeover, as stated.
There we go. Gave it right back. And again, even though those first three games don't count that much, I think Lucas would have rather been up 2-0 than 1-1 at this point in time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's just on the first changeover when they come over after 3 games, it's like everybody takes a deep breath. You get your first drink, you get your first maybe bite of something to eat to keep your kind of nutrition at the right levels, and then you just kind of say, all right, I got to feel for the wind, I've got to feel for the sun, the court conditions, how the court's playing, just all the factors that go into the things that these players need to be in tune with in order to compete at this highest level.
And and again, still finding their game. We're seeing, I think, a little bit more on the unforced error side than the actual winners or solid play. A lot of balls early, kind of going down that middle third of the court, which isn't really ideally what you would want to have necessarily. Get your opponent moving around a little bit more, I think, would be advantageous. But again, going through that discovery phase, as you mentioned, just trying to find their strokes and get settled in a little bit. There's a nice topspin backhand from Andy to get the ball up a little higher than Lucas could handle.
How much of the topspin backhand was prevalent in the day when you were competing?
Well, I didn't have the muscle function to actually hit one very well, and so it was non-existent for me as a player. And towards the latter part of my career, it was starting to creep into the quad division a little bit. Not necessarily a weapon and a regular part of the game, but there were some that were starting to incorporate it more as a defensive strategy when they got a ball high to the backhand side and weren't able to deal with it another way up above their shoulders. But you are seeing it more and more, just as Jim Black back in the day was kind of the first one to start pioneering it in the men's open division. It is a regular part of the game now, and you're seeing that more and more even in the quad division.
Right, and it was Lucas Satoli with a big forehand winner there to give him the early lead in this third game of the opening set here on center court, as both players have struggled to hold serve so far. And there's a good example of 2 topspin backhands, one good from Andy and one not so good from Lucas, but both looking to employ that strategy a little bit more on the offensive nature as opposed to defensive, which is what you kind of referred to in the early stages of the quad division, that shot was more utilized in a defensive manner, but these guys look to get offensive with it as often as possible nowadays.
It has become a weapon, and more of the quads are figuring out how to hit that shot with their limitations in their upper extremities and possibly trunk function, but it is becoming something that they actually practice and incorporate into their game, not just something they do for fun on an outside court when they're hitting with friends. Here's
a chance for Lapthorne to hold the serve, serving at 40-30. We'll see what he does with this point. Andy decided to go with a little slice forehand there. I'm not quite sure why. I thought he had a good opportunity to probably get offensive with a little bit more of an aggressive topspin, but chose to slice it, and Lucas was sitting on it with a forehand winner to even the score at 40-all.
And Andy was probably thinking the same thing after he lost that point. He was in, and he wasn't quite sure what to do, and just didn't execute well enough to make it an offensive shot. Became more defensive, and as you said, Lucas was right there to handle it.
But another advantage to Lapthorne, and again, another opportunity to hold serve and get it to 2-1 in his favor in the opening set.
Two good solid shots by Lucas. Has Andy on the run a little bit, and there's a third, and that's out of reach. Well done by Lucas.
Great targeting there on the side that Lucas is typically a little bit less aggressive on, which is the forehand, or he seems to struggle typically a little bit more on the forehand side. His backhand is rock solid, but nothing wrong with that forehand as he kind of drives it into the corner out of the reach of Lapthorne for a point to get it back to deuce.
Nice serve by Andy out wide. Got a ball back down the middle and put it in the other corner. That's about as textbook as you could draw it up or plan it.
I agree, and it's one forehand winner followed up by the other. Both players looking to kind of create their separation. I see your forehand and raise you a better forehand. Lapthorne with the advantage. Third chance to hold serve here.
Nice return by Lucas to get Andy stretched out. He had to hit a little defensive and short. Lucas was able to come in behind that. Right there, he's got him stretched out of position. Lucas comes in and does, again, what you need to do with a short ball, and that's to finish the point.
Yep, gets a little help from the let cord, but I don't think that mattered much. I think he had that one lined up either way. Backhand just wide by Satoli.
Got a little impatient there. It seemed like they were both willing to rally for a bit on that ball, and Lucas went for just a little too much on that angle.
Yeah, I think it's Andy that tends to be the more patient player. In my familiarity with these two, he's the one that will sit back and lengthen out some points and is willing to do that. It's Lucas that looks to be a little bit more explosive, take a little bit more risk, as you see right there with that shot.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, and with risk, there comes reward, and we're just a second away on this replay from seeing the reward that Lucas got with this backhand.
Paid off that time nicely. Wonderful. Really is incredible to take a ball that high above your shoulders and be able to drive it like that.
Lucas finding the range on that backhand, running Andy side to side.
As Andy defensive, let's see if he can finish the point off. Oh. I think that backspin wasn't quite what he expected, and died a little bit more on him than he thought. He was stretched out trying to hit that ball back. Didn't quite execute that well enough.
Yeah, Andy probably being one of the truly great defenders in the quad division. I mean, his ability to move, cover the court, get another ball back is kind of one of his trademarks. And so he does have some offensive weapons, but I would say his biggest weapon is his consistency and ability to just keep a lot of balls in play.
And I don't think it matters which division you're in. Mobility is a huge, huge part of this game. You've got to be able to move and to cover.
Yep. And it's Lapthorne with the first service hold of the match. Pulls him out, goes behind, and Lucas can't answer the answer the call. So it's 2-1, Andy Lapthorne on the first changeover of this opening set of this center court match here between Andy Lapthorne of Great Britain, Lucas Satoli of South Africa. And it's Andy with a smile on his face as he goes to the 2-1 bench. There's a look at some of our fans in the stands. One of the competitors to the left there, Nicolas Pfeiffer of France. He is a NEC, or not NEC, but a UNIQLO Doubles Masters champion this year, along with his partner Stéphane Houdet from France. One of the great doubles players in the world, competing here in the Singles Masters. Has had a tough go of it so far, coming out currently 0-2 in his pool play. He is a perennial top 10 player, but he's had a little tough struggle of it so far this week.
Well, just to go back to something we talked about with Randy Snow, I know those first 3 games don't count, but I think anyone would much rather be up 2-1 than down 1-2 at this point in time. So Andy's got to be feeling good right now to be the first one to hold serve, and looking to see if he might be able to add to that by breaking Lucas.
Yeah, to elaborate a little bit more, Randy's philosophy on that was that it's just nothing to get stressed out about. Sometimes players come out hot. Sometimes you come out cold, and so you just don't put so much emphasis on the status of things after 3 games. And there's just so much match left to happen. One set has never won a match, and so no matter what happens in the early going, it's all about what happens down the stretch. It's kind of like NBA fourth quarter, right? The game really doesn't start until we get into the fourth quarter.
Excellent way to explain that.
So, try to pass on as much as I can from the things I learned from Randy over the years. As you mentioned, really one of the great minds of the game. But not only the mind, but the personality and charisma, passion. He is truly a one-of-the-kind legend. That's why he's in the International Tennis Federation Hall of Fame. He's in the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame as well, one of the few individuals that has the distinction of having both of those honors. There's probably a list of Hall of Fames that Randy's a member of because of his great participation in a number of sports.
He competed in track and won a medal clear back in
84.
Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Olympics, and I know he was a basketball player as well, just competitive in everything that he did. But I think tennis was his true passion and his true calling in life. And yeah, the impact, the difference, the influence, the example, the introspective, the contributions that he made to the game are second to none.
Yeah. Tennis Myth to Reality. Have you ever heard of that?
Absolutely have one a copy, and I have read that, and it's a great book.
It was kind of the first Bible of wheelchair tennis, collaboration between him and his coach, Dr. Bal Moore, who was one of the great early contributors to the sport of wheelchair tennis, one of Randy's personal coaches. The two of them collaborated on writing one of the first kind of definitive books on wheelchair tennis, really breaking it down into a more scientific approach as to how to approach the game, the strokes, the patterns of movement. And just really all aspects, and I think it was kind of the real, like I said, Bible for some of the players growing up in a generation in the late 80s and the early 90s when that book came out.
And one of the great things about Randy is I truly believe he got as much joy and satisfaction out of a clinic or a camp for others than he did winning a title at a match. He just loved both sides of that, and the number of camps that he and Bal coordinated and organized and led and taught, and how many players today that are here in wheelchair tennis because of Randy and Bal.
You're looking and you're talking to one of them.
And going on. We both were a product of that.
Yep.
and found great passion and excitement through their energy for this sport, and did whatever it was we did to help contribute along the way. But now to see everything that takes place is, again, credit to Randy and Bal, a lot of, for camps in particular, for that structure and that emphasis on camps and helping to try to grow the sport at a grassroots level.
Yeah, it was June of 1997 that I got invited to go to a wheelchair tennis camp at Flushing Meadows at what is now the Billie Jean King Tennis Center. Never even knew that the sport of wheelchair tennis existed. I'd never heard of it before. It was the Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association, an organization that's a chapter of the Paralyzed Veterans Organization here in the United States. That recreational therapist invited me to that event, and I was like, all right, nothing else going on this weekend. I think I'll go down and check it out. Why not? I played some tennis in my life, and thought, give it a go. And really have never looked back. And it was from that day forward that I've stayed involved in the sport and continued to love it as a player and coach, and that's it.
And as we reminisce and think about the glory days, this match is tightening up a little bit. Lucas has an opportunity to level this up, get a little closer, and move forward.
We're waxing a little nostalgic, aren't we?
That's okay. We're allowed, right?
Yeah,
we have the microphones.
That's
they
a good
haven't
point.
cut us off yet.
That's a good point. You know what? It's History 101, Wheelchair Tennis History 101 here on the broadcast, as the match goes to 2 games to all, with both players opening up with breaks of serve, and now both players following it up with holding serve to get it to 2 all. All right, correction. Looks like 3-1.
Yeah, Lucas
There it is.
and Andy are nodded
Nice
at
little
2.
update. Well, the first 3 games might not count, Rick, but that 4th game's pretty critical, huh?
They're all going to matter more and more
As it
from
gets
this point on.
Deeper and deeper into it, right? Yep, they sure do. And that's one of the beauties of the sport, is the mental toughness as things get tighter and tighter, deeper and deeper into the set, knowing that any errors and everything like that are going to cost you a little bit more as you get closer to the finish line.
Andy had got caught between those 2 bounces and put up a pretty defensive shot. Lucas had him a little bit on the ropes as Andy was facing away from the court, but he came up with a pretty good return to keep the point in play, and then Lucas just overcooked it a little bit.
Overcooked it, yeah. Well, there's that risk-reward approach again. He's back behind the baseline trying to take that backhand down the line, and as most coaches would say, hey, listen, if you can hit that, you're going to get the big payday, but if you can't, there's a potential unforced error staring you right in the face. So we'll see Lucas make that attempt a little bit more today, I think, though. He likes to create those opportunities for himself. Rick, did you travel internationally when you were playing, or was it strictly or mostly to the United States? As you mentioned, really was the predominant amount of players were coming from the States back in the days when you were playing. But did you get a chance to travel internationally and compete?
It was primarily U.S. travel for me, but towards the latter stages of my career, as the international embracement and effort and support of the quad division took hold, there were some opportunities to travel. Was fortunate. It's nothing like the tour of the schedule nowadays, and they're literally hitting just about every continent and competing all over the world. But there were some opportunities to enjoy some international travel, some great memories and great experiences, and some good competition. Back then, just as now, some very talented, very gifted, and very competitive international players. And that's, I think, what's great to see, is that this truly is an international sport these days, and what takes place around the world is remarkable.
And here we are with Lucas Cedeno looking at 2 break points, having just driven a forehand winner down the line on the return of serve to give himself a chance to go up 3-2 against Andy Lapthorne here on center court. And with that double fault, it is indeed a break of serve, and Cedeno going to the bench up 3 games to 2. And if it's possible, we might be able to get a score update on court number 2, because, as I think I may have just heard, we may have just split sets over there. And just on cue, you see an opening set victory from Cody Cedeno, 6-1, but Heath Davidson really turned it around. He was on the ropes there, but really credit to Heath for getting that second set, 6-4, and now we go to the third. We'll continue to get you updated on that as we continue to focus our efforts on center court between Andy Lapthorne and Lucas Cedeno. But that's a great job by Heath to get that match to third set.
As spectators, we all love a third set. As players, we probably wish we could get them over in 2. Maybe don't like that stress and that challenge of being tested mentally and physically extending a match, but it's great to see him battle back and set that up for what could be a very exciting finish. Meanwhile, Andy here, if I remember correctly, he's double faulted 2 service games, And that certainly isn't helping his own cause.
No, and, yeah, I'm sure he's unhappy about that, and you're probably seeing a little frustration on his face knowing that he's given Lucas some pretty free and easy points, not forcing him into earning those points, as we say. But Andy is really one of the greats in the quad division, so he'll make some adjustments. He's a really good player, so I would expect that he'll fix whatever he needs to fix. But if he stays with that pattern, that's going to be potentially a long day for him.
A little overhit on that backhand side again, that risk-reward thing that you talked about. It's one thing to be set up to hit a winner and finish the point, but when you're kind of in the middle of a point and don't really have an advantage, sometimes the smarter play is to be steady and wait for a better opportunity. Neither player still seems really settled into their service games as of yet, and I think that more than maybe the ground strokes and the mobility, I think they've kind of found a little bit of a rhythm there, but it seems like they're both still struggling with service games, and that ultimately may decide at least this first set, and if they can get settled down, may determine the ultimate outcome, but service has been a challenge.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about that on the broadcast, and I don't know if that's more prevalent in the quad division. You might be able to comment on that, whereas we know in the men's division, the serves are getting certainly bigger and stronger, and those guys are able to protect themselves a little bit more on their service games. It's still a challenge, but I think they're able to protect themselves a little bit more. The women's game, the service game, continues to be something that some of the women struggle with a little bit, and so maybe a little comment on how hard it is to hold serve in the quad division.
Well, if you're asking from my player perspective, it wasn't a very easy thing to do as a player. I was not known for a solid service game. But whether it was then, whether it's now, it's one thing to just have to try to get a ball in play and get going from there and rely on your strengths. It's another thing to double fault or to serve so weakly or poorly that it's too easy for your opponent to take advantage. And I think we see that, and the men's game is a little different. They've recognized that, yeah, we need to come a little harder, stronger, and faster to not be broken as often, but I do think you still see more breaks of serve in the quad division and in the women's game than the men's game.
Well, it was a wicked good backhand that got Lucas Tully the first point of his service game here, as Andy had gotten off to a 2-point lead there, but we had a really great shot of Lucas executing a short-angled backhand winner to get it to 15-30. His attempt to hold serve here and extend his early set lead.
It looks so easy when you do it correctly.
We've talked about that a lot, and how easy it always looks from up here, and so it never is as easy as that when you're down there on the court competing and the pressure of each ball coming your way. But these guys do oftentimes make it look easy. There's Andy with a loose return, just a little bit wide. And now it's Lucas Tully with a chance to hold serve. A little frustration from Andy, you can see that there.
Yeah, he had a second serve, and he tried to get away with a little too much, and it ended up costing him. Now Lucas just needs to not give it right back by double faulting.
There it is. Great hold by Lucas Tully to extend his first set lead to 2 games, up 4 games to 2 over Andy Lapthorne in this quad division round robin final day.
And he looked a little lethargic in that game, and it ended up costing him with that defensive shot that was short, and Lucas was able to come in and put that away.
Andy kind of rolling that forehand into the net there and taking some time to go pick up a couple of balls and regroup, maybe get his thoughts under control.
He's going to need to do something or this set's going to be over.
Lucas making some equipment adjustment over there. You can see him strapping himself to the chair with some belting system. And what kind of systems did you guys use back in the day, Rick? I mean, you guys were the pioneers of all this stuff. What was going on back then?
Most of it was Velcro straps back in the day. We hadn't caught on or figured out and started using the binding straps, the ratchet straps that they have now. But again, the idea was still to stabilize yourself in the chair as much as possible, to kind of unify the body in the chair, which would translate into better performance, better movement, better stability, all of those types of things. But you see some things today that we, again, never would have imagined or dreamed of back in the day.
Yeah, the technology just didn't exist, did it?
It did not.
It's funny to think about some of the other sports that I think wheelchair tennis has taken some advancements, technological advancements from. You know, you talk about the bindings and things like that. It's from the sport of skiing, and then you take some of the wheelchair designs and some of the tires and wheels from the sports of cycling, right? And so it's just kind of pilfer some of those sports that were on the cutting edge of their development. And so how can we best implement some of those technological advances into our sport for the advancement of wheelchair tennis?
And I think it's amazing that, you know, the sports have learned from each other, which is as it should be. Wheelchair tennis doesn't have all the answers when it comes to equipment, nor does another sport. But to see that there are this many sports these days for people with disabilities to participate in, to recreate, and to compete, and the technology has definitely helped them show their true physical talents as an athlete. It's no longer a limiting factor per se, which back in the early days when they played in their everyday chairs and had no camber, and you know, they might have had fold-away footrests and arm rests that they took off to save a little bit of weight, but you were think about trying to play this game at this level in basically a hospital chair in the very early days.
Remarkable.
And he looks like he's trying to settle in a little bit on this point and grind it out and hope that Lucas might pull the trigger too soon or make a mistake.
Ooh, no mistake with that backhand.
No mistake with that backhand. You got to give him.
Look on Andy's face, like, my God.
You've got to give him credit for taking the chance and hitting that shot and actually executing it. Andy did not expect that at all.
Yeah, he gives the old whoof. What am I going to do about that? Not much. Guys hitting shots like that, you just shake your head, clap your hands, throw a first serve in. That's your best answer. And just like that, Lucas gives it back.
And then you get a pretty weak effort on what looked like a pretty routine ball. It's consistency matters in sports.
Andy thankful for that one to get it back to deuce. And he was potentially looking at a 5-2 deficit.
2 in a row that Lucas looked a little tentative on when he had the upper hand and the advantage, and just looked like he couldn't quite pull the trigger like he wanted to. That is a huge turn of events for Andy Lapthorne. Lucas was knocking on the door of really taking command of this set, and Andy was able to hang in there, get a couple of unforced errors from Lucas, and now back within fighting distance.
Well, Rick, I'm gonna ask you to go spend some time as the VIP here on campus, doing some of the things that VIPs do, having just won the ITF Brad Parks Award. I'm honored that you were able to spend some time with us. We get to talk to you a little bit about some of the great things you've done in the sport. But we've got another young superstar that's going to join us in the booth here. We're going from generation superstar to generation superstar, as we're going to welcome back Cece Bellis into our broadcast and allow you to be freed up to go spend some time with some of the other folks I think that want to spend some time talking to you today. But again, it's been a real privilege to spend some time talking with you, sharing some thoughts on the great sport of wheelchair tennis and all that you've contributed to it over the years. So thanks again for spending time with us, Rick.
Paul, thank you very much for the invitation, the opportunity to be up here. I've enjoyed it, and best wishes to everybody for the rest of the event.
Thanks, Rick. As mentioned, we're once again joined here on the coverage by my partner from yesterday, Cece Bellis,
Hi.
young superstar American woman playing on the WTA Tour, currently recovering from a little bit of an injury that she has had to deal with, but is on the mend and going to be back in the sport of tennis that she loves so dearly. So, Cece, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and watch a lot of more great tennis today.
I'm sure you're just waking up today, probably just easing into the day. I'm sure you haven't had anything to do in your preparations on a Friday, but tell us a little bit about what your day has entailed so far.
I just finished almost 2 hours of fitness, so I apologize if I'm a little sweaty over here, but yeah, I had a good morning, just had some breakfast and did some fitness, so I'm feeling good so far.
So what did fitness consist of today?
I did, because I can't do much quite yet with my right arm. I've been doing a lot of, lifting with my left arm, a lot of, cardio on the bike, and some leg lifting too. So I did pretty much everything today.
Okay, good.
A lot of fun.
Feeling good?
Feeling good. A lot better today.
Yeah, you embrace the workouts, I think. Right?
I
You
love
them?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know you do. I know I've seen you working
Enjoyed
out
a lot.
on campus here in times past, and I see how focused you are when you're going through your physical training. How dedicated you are, and it takes that level of dedication to compete at these higher levels, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. I think it has to be, such an important part of your life and something that, you're definitely thinking of a lot of your time for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned making it an important part of your life. I mean, it's not just about obviously the importance of making it a part of your conditioning for your sport, but it is. It's supposed to be your way of life, isn't it? And
Oh,
it's just
definitely.
going to make you a healthier person for the entirety of your life, so that years beyond your tennis playing career, you're still fit and healthy and happy, and I think you'll always be an athlete, won't you?
Exactly. Yeah. I definitely hope so, for sure.
Are there any other sports on your life radar that you maybe think someday, if I'm putting tennis in my back pocket, that I might want to try to kind of get into? Are you like maybe a golfer or anything like that?
I played soccer when I was younger.
Soccer.
Love soccer. I've never really played golf, but definitely something I'm going to want to try for sure.
Okay. Yeah,
at some
it's
point.
another one of those challenging mental sports, individual.
Yeah, so mentally taxing, I feel like.
It is. So.
Just from playing mini golf, I've noticed that.
Well, you came into the middle of this highly competitive match here. We're talking about the quad division here. What matches did we watch yesterday? What were you participating in? Men's match, right?
Yeah.
Shingo
men's
and
match.
Olsen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That
So
was an unbelievable start for me.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, so you really did see the best of the best in the men's division, certainly with the two guys that we're looking at here on center court, in Lucas Tolley and Landy Lapthorne. You're seeing two of the best participants in the quad division right now, as both of them have had some great successes in their careers at Grand Slams and some of these high-level events here. Andy's won Grand Slams, he's won World Team Cups before, and Lucas is a perennial top 5 in the quad division for several years now.
That's awesome. Seems to be a really athletic match so far, for sure.
It is. It's been kind of back and forth. Neither one of them really been able to separate themselves too much. It's Lucas serving here at deuce with a 4-3 advantage, but it's been most of the games going to deuce or really deep into the game. It's Andy with a really great executed drop shot and a fist pump there in his attempt to get it back to 4-all in the opening set. And there it is with the unforced error by Satoli. we are now currently locked at 4 games all in this back and forth match on center court between two great players in the quad division. Last day of round robin competition here at the NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters. The winner of this match will more than likely punch their ticket to a semifinal round. If Andy wins, he will clearly punch his ticket and be in the top position coming out of this pool. If Lucas wins this match, that would put the pool, 3 members of this pool, all knotted at 1 win apiece with 1 loss. We'll come down to some head-to-head and tiebreaker scenarios that would put one of the players in as the second member of this pool.
And the semifinals start tomorrow.
Semifinals start tomorrow, finals on Sunday. Did you ever compete in any type of round-robin tournaments, or have you predominantly played knockout? What's your experience been in round-robin
I've
competition?
only played a few round-robin tournaments. Yeah, only a couple in my life. But yeah, they're definitely fun.
It's different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
It's a good change-up for sure. Because we're all definitely so used to playing regular draws and brackets. So it's definitely a fun change-up. Kind of get to play everyone.
Looks like they're probably getting ready to resume action over on court number 2. As I glance over there, it's Heath Davidson and Cody Cedeno that are getting ready to participate in the deciding third set, with Cody Cedeno having won the first set decisively 6-1, but Heath Davidson, to his credit, turning that around and getting that second set 6-4. You get a little shot of the scoreboard there. We'll keep you updated as that third set gets underway, but we'll keep our focus here at 4-all in a really highly competitive match on center court between Andy Lapthorne serving at the top of your screen to Lucas Satoli down on the bottom. Well, Cece, finally the weather that we promised all these players here when we said, hey, come to Central Florida in November, early December. It'll still be nice, it'll still be sunny, it'll still be warm, and we're finally getting all that we promised them.
We finally are. It's gorgeous out today.
It is.
Such a change from the last few days.
Yeah, and it's just been steadily on the climb. The first day of competition here, I think the athletes were really surprised at how cold it was. Literally cold. And so yesterday was about a 10-degree uptick. Yeah, the steady progression of the temperature has been nice as we ease into the 70s today, and I think there's a hint of 80s tomorrow and then throughout the weekend. Well, as mentioned, joined by Cece Bellis, WTA superstar and one of the top United States women's tennis players, who's currently, as you can see, recovering from a little injury that she sustained on her wrist, but she'll be back in action as soon as she physically can. So, Cece, as we mentioned, again, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you. Oh goodness, I'm so excited to be here. Already watched some great tennis in the last couple days, so excited to see what today has in store for us.
Well, it's I'll tell you what's in store. It's intense competitions. What's in store is we've got a couple of great matches going on here in our opening matches on court 2 and on center court. We've got a third setter going on to court 2 and then center court here. It's 5-4 in favor of Lucas Satoli from South Africa over Andy Lapthorne. It's been a back and forth battle between these two great players in the quad division, and we're going to see if Lucas can close this set out and take an early 1-set-to-love lead, but it's been really just some great tennis so far today. Great view of our facility here. The white tent in the center is where we're broadcasting from. We have the luxury of being able to look out over center court or do a complete 180 and glance over to the action on court number 2. The 2 main courts being utilized for the matches here at the USTA National Campus in Lake Nona, Florida, as we present to you the NEC Wheelchair Tennis Masters as part of the UNIQLO Wheelchair Tennis Tour, the closing event on the tour this year. As all the best of the best throughout the world are represented here to compete for this year-end Masters title. A lot on the line. And right now it's Lucas Satoli with a chance to close out this opening set in this match, having just gotten the first point of this critical game here. Andy desperately looking to get it to 5-all. Lucas can hold serve. He'll take the first set. It's Andy who sends another one long to give Lucas a 2-point advantage in his attempt to hold here. So what's your thoughts on holding serve at 4-5 there, Cece? You've been in that position a number of times, so.
Yeah, definitely nerve-wracking position. I think 5-4 is such a close score, and I feel like if you've got a good serve, you definitely want to rely on it, and you don't want to really take any huge risks if you're confident in your serve. I think that's what is going on here.
Yeah, Lucas just hit a winner for a chance to have 3 points to hold this serve and take this first set. Just sends that one slightly long on the baseline. And it's Andy who's fought off one of those set points. He's got to stare down 2 more, and we'll see how aggressive Lucas chooses to play this down the stretch. His tendency is to lean towards aggressive play, and it's Andy who tends to lean towards a little bit more of a grinded out format. So we'll see which one is able to implement game style upon the other.
I think those are the best types of matchups.
I do love
watch those.
I love to watch those matchups. It's like a good MMA match between a boxer and a jiu-jitsu or a wrestler. And it's Lucas who does indeed try to be a little bit more aggressive and produces the unforced error. And it looks like Andy's content to get some balls in play and make Lucas hit the winning shot to close out this set, which is oftentimes tough to do.
I've seen Lucas hit a lot of backhand winners so far in this match.
That is his go-to shot.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Given the opportunity.
Very solid.
Really. That could be it right there. And there it is. Andy can't handle the deep driven backhand. Center court hooks it a little bit out, and it's set number 1 to Lucas Satoli of South Africa as the two go to their set break. 6-4 to Satoli in the opening set. So really some great competition as you get a good look at the sky above center court here at the National Campus. A little bit of cloud cover, but the sun is keeping us warm. As we've commented a number of times, it's a beautiful day here in Central Florida. So
we've got the best seat in the house here. We can see every court.
we do, right? Yeah, it's good to be us.
It's awesome.
It is. Yeah. So you're in a physical training block, CC, and
Yep.
so what kind of a program are you on, working with the trainers here, the strength and conditioning coaches, some of your teammates? So how detailed is that training? I was able to observe some training that was going on between some of the men earlier today over at the Player Development Center, and it was just so specific. I was amazed at how scientific it is as they were going through an instruction for one of their strength and conditioning coaches on just one specific crossover move and just lifting right leg, taking a crossover, planting that leg and driving off it, and then stopping. And that was it, just that one piece. You guys get really specific with your movement and your training, don't you?
Yeah, it's so specific, and especially, movements on court, like what you're explaining, and we do a lot of stuff like that, like very specific movements for during points and, maybe after serve or return type movements. We also do, if we have an area on our body that's maybe not as strong as we'd like it to be, the strength and conditioning team really targets that area and tries to build it up as much as I can and as much as everyone can. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just kind of targeting weakness and in weak spots and just building those up. So,